Shalom family, this is yet again your boy, Jonathan Hebrew Prince, and I'm coming to you this morning just to say Hallel Hawa and give you some more edification for your spirit, give you some edification for your soul, your mind, your heart. For this is the day that Hawa has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. For his love, his peace, his patience, his kindness, his wisdom, his strength endures to all generations. Hallel Hawa, Hallel Hawa, Hallel Hawa. I want to read to you a little something right off of my page, right off of my channel right here about the purpose. I like every now and then just to restate what we're doing with this channel. And the purpose of this channel is to intellectually, philosophically, psychologically, and spiritually combat the social, mental, and emotional bondage that the powers that be have inflicted on the masses. This channel is for the true seeker, the freedom fighter, spiritual warrior, and seeker of righteousness. The basis of information will come from the scriptures. However, other historical documents and works, ancient and modern, will be presented, giving all a full spectrum of information to provide guidance in subjects covered on this channel. Information on this channel will be presented in a manner that is simple yet loaded with layers of truth that will lead one to true liberation. May the peace of the Most High be with you all. Shalom. That is the purpose of this channel. Today, we'll be going into this holiday of Christmas. And what better day than to make this video than actually on the so-called day of Christmas, December the 25th. With that said, we're going to get right into it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to read Yirmiyahu, also known as Jeremiah chapter 10. And we'll be reading from verses 1 through 6. Now, scripture says, train up a child in the way they should go, so when they get old, they will not depart from it. He didn't say that they maybe won't, or it's a possibility that they won't. No, the Most High says will not depart from it. So to show this truth, and that how it has to be not only communicated to outside the home on YouTube and different other avenues, but also have to teach your children right inside your own home. The responsibility is right inside your own home. We will start off the reading this morning, not me. I will not be reading Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah chapter 10, but it will be my precious princess that will be reading Yirmiyahu chapter 10, starting with verses 1 and ending in verse number 6. Say hello to everybody.
Hello.
Yep, that's my baby. Now she's going to go ahead on and she's going to conduct the reading. Yirmiyahu chapter 10, verse 1 through 6. Please govern yourself accordingly and listen to what thus says the Most High from on high. Read.
Hear the word which Hawa speaks to you, O house of Israel. Thus said Hawa, do not learn the way of the right of the nations, and do not be awed by the signs of the heavens, for the nations are awed by them. For the laws of these peoples are worthless. For one cuts a tree from the forest, work for the hands of a craftsman with a cutting tool. They beautify it with silver and gold. They strengthen it with nails and hammers so that it does not topple. They are like a rounded post, and they do not speak. They have to be carried because they do not walk. Do not be afraid of them, for they do no evil, nor is it in them to do any good. There is none like you, O Hawa. You are great, and great is your name in might.
Hallel Hawa.
Hallel Hawa.
Thank you, my princess. So we are to train up a child in the way they should go, and when they get old, they will not depart from it. Thus you have the reading starting off with Jeremiah chapter 10 verses 1 through 6. Very well read by my beautiful princess. Now, family, regardless of your own opinion and theology you want to put into this, it is what it is. We are not to learn the ways of the nations. Now, we'll get a little bit further into this on why this scripture is paramount for us, especially the so-called black, so-called African American, the so-called Negro, on why this is very important. The Most High never gave us a command just because he wanted us not to do something. There's always layers to why he's given us a command. If we do something contrary to that which the Most High has told us to do, then 10 out of 10 of the times that we go against that, we come into a situation where we find ourselves in a predicament where we can't handle, we don't like, and then call upon the same Most High to get us out of. If we had just listened in the first place, we wouldn't even be in that particular situation. Now, without further ado, we're going to continue on why the Most High told us do not learn the way of the nations. Now, if you are celebrating these holidays, whether it be today is Christmas, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Easter, all Uncle Sam holidays, it's consisting of Memorial Day, 4th of July, Christopher Columbus Day, President's Day, all of these holidays that's celebrated in this country on a habitual, regular basis is causing issues in your mind psychologically and definitely causing major issues with you spiritually. With us all of us who have participated have come into some, whether we know it or not, has come into some severe spiritual confinement. And now we have to get free from this bondage. But you can only get free if you're willing to put away these holidays and honor the days and observe the days that the Most High prescribed for us to do in the first place. What's crazy is that we walk around here talking about we regard the Most High. Even the Jesus followers, or even the people that claim that they follow the Bible. What is amazing to me is that these same individuals would disregard the days that are prescribed in the book for days that's not in the book. That is astonishing. And if you don't find an issue with that, then again, you're suffering from spiritual enslavement and spiritual bondage, which is psychologically deranging your mind, because there are days inside the book that we ought to regard. And Christmas, Thanksgiving, Uncle Sam holidays, Halloween, Easter, none of those days are it. So, again, without further ado, let's go into some of this etymology. So let's find out what is etymology. I'm clicking through a little bit, doing some research. Well, can't find it, so let's go ahead on and just pull it up. We're gonna go to the etymology dictionary, and we're gonna look up some of these words. The first one I want to look up is holiday. So let's look up holiday. And this one actually comes from my princess that just read to you. So this is actually the one I want to look up first, because my baby definitely put this out, and I'm very excited because I was trying to find that one last word. Like, what do we look up? What do we look up? And holiday, she said, look up holiday. I'm like, okay, let's look it up. So let's look up the etymology of holiday. Now, this word comes from the 1500s. Earlier, holiday. Century 1200s. From Old English, holiday, or something like that. Holiday, or holy day, consecrated day, religious anniversary, Sabbath, from Heleg, holy, plus dag, or day, see day, in 14th century, meaning both, quote, religious festival, end quote, and, quote, day of exemption from labor and recreation, end quote. Her pronunciation and sense diverged 16th century. as an adjective mid-15th century. Happy holidays is from mid-1900s or the 19th century. In British English, with reference to summer vacation from school, as a Christmas time greeting by 1937 American English and Camel cigarette ads. I'm going to tell you what the issue with this is. There's a lot of information in this etymological dictionary regarding this word. Now, this thing said holy day, consecrated day, religious anniversary, Sabbath. So what is this telling you? Oh, let's keep going on. Just over here it says meaning both religious festival. Let me tell you why this is an issue. If you're claiming to be one who honors the Most High Hawa, if you're celebrating a holiday and that quote unquote holiday is not one of the ones prescribed in scripture, then what you have just yielded your members to and your mind and your heart to is a holiday, a holy day, a consecrated day, a religious anniversary, or a Sabbath that is unbeknownst to you in your comprehension of that of the Most High. Let's look at that again. We're talking about holiday, right? This comes out the 1500s. That's what we're looking at. I'm reading right off the screen. Now, with that said, coming from an earlier 1200s word, holiday, a holiday. Now, the issue with this is that it's called holy day, consecrated, religious anniversary, Sabbath. It also means both a religious festival. So the question is, if these holidays are not found in the Bible, in the scriptures, in the Tanakh, in the Torah, if it's not found there, and these are supposed to be consecrated, holy, religious anniversaries, Sabbaths, and religious festival days, that's what these are, then the question is, whose days are these? Because if they're not in scripture, then essentially they're not from the Most High. And if they're not from the Most High, then you are yielding your members and your psyche and your spiritual state to a religious anniversary, a Sabbath, a holy day, a religious festival that is not of the Most High. That is not of the Most High. Now that's an issue. That is a major issue. Now think about that for a minute, family. Because if they're not for the Most High, they for somebody. And there's only one other alternative at that point. It's either the Most High's or it's not the Most High's. Because we're talking about celebrating holidays. Let's keep going. Let's look up Christmas. Because people try to act like Christmas has been all the way back since the so-called birth of Christ. That our ancestors actually celebrated this a long time ago. But what we're going to find out is that, no, Christmas is not that old. So let's keep going. Christmas is a noun, quote, church festival observed annually in memory of the birth of Christ, right? End quote. Late Old English Christus Masses, from Christ and retaining the original vowel sound plus mass. Written as one word from when? The mid 14th century. As a verb, quote, to celebrate Christmas, end quote, from what? The 1590s. Father Christmas first attested in a carol attributed to Richard Smart, rector of Plumtree, Devon, from 1435 to 1477. Right? Christmas tree in modern sense first attested. This Christmas tree in the modern sense, 1835. In American English from German, not even gonna try this. Christmas card were first designed. The first designed Christmas card, 1843, popular by the 1860s. The phrase Christmas card was in use by what? 1850. Christmas present is from when? 1769. Christmas Eve in Middle English, Christen in Mass, even 1300s or 13th century, 1300s. So this is not old. Let's keep going though. I want to go on to the next one. Let's go to Noel. The first Noel. Let's go on to that one. That's a noun. What? Late 14th century. Noel comes from Noel, feast of Christmas, from Old French Noel, quote, the Christmas season, end quote, variant of Noel, from Latin natalis, dies, quote, birthday, end quote, in Church Latin in reference to the birthday of Christ, from natus, past participle of nascin, be born, quote unquote. Now, this is an old Latin form here, from pi root gene, quote, give birth, beget, end quote. The modern word in English with the sense of, quote, a Christmas carol, end quote, 1811, probably is a separate borrowing from French. As a masculine proper name from Old French, probably literally, quote, of or born on Christmas, end quote. Late 14th century. Last but not least, for this segment, we're going to move into Santa Claus. Let's deal with that guy. I didn't even have to click on it. You saw the year of Santa Claus, but let's keep going. Santa Claus is a noun. 1773 as Saint A. Claus in New York Gazette. American English. From dialectal Dutch, Santa Claus. From Middle Dutch, Sinister Claus. Quote, Saint Nicholas, end quote, Bishop of Asia Minor, who became a patron saint for children, now a worldwide phenomenon. Father Christmas is attested from when? 1650s. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Now, I want to read this right here. Christmas, ancient pagan holiday, which was criminally illegal until 1907. We're talking about criminally illegal until 1907 here in the great United States of America. That's what we're talking about here. This is coming off of HuffingtonPost.co.uk. Okay? This is what we're dealing with, family. Published on the 23rd of December 2012, 1635. Let's look at what this author has to say here. The origins of Christmas are pretty much well known. There was a whole virgin birth in a manger while trekking across Africa or something. But what is less well known is that it was originally a pagan holiday which was criminalized until 1907 in the U.S. Now, that's what I call coming out the gate swinging. Coming out the gate swinging. Scripture states that these books will be open in the latter days. The truth will come out. Now, after you watch this vid and after you see these things, after you look at this information, if you continue to press on with Christmas, then that's on you. And even if you don't celebrate Christmas, if you continue to press on with these holy, holly, pagan days, these hell days, then that's on you. And you deal with the consequences of your spirit, your mind, and what will manifest in the physical, which is your physical body. Because everything we do in the spiritual has a physical reward or a physical consequence. Believe that. Let's keep going. It was in 1601 that Pope Gregory I wrote Amatilis, his missionary in English, telling him, quote, not to stop such ancient pagan festivals, end quote, but to, quote, adapt them to the rite of the church, only changing the reason of them from a heathen to a Christian impulse, end quote. So all those who have been claiming for years that Christmas was in fact actually a pagan holiday, you were right, and Pope Gregory I handily put it in writing for you. So for every individual that says, oh, Christmas is this and Christmas is that and it's Jesus' birthday and we supposed to celebrate it and we love him and we love the Most High, we love God and all that garbage, he's telling you right here, Pope Gregory I. So you need a reference, you need an actual point of reference. You got two. Year 1601. Person, Pope Gregory I, did what? Put it in writing that this is pagan garbage put into the so-called church. Let's keep going. That said, Christmas also moved around the globe between 900 to 1000 Common Era and was adapted to match their winter celebrations there as well. Wow. Christmas evolved slowly and gradually with no firm mention of it until mid 11th century. Let's let that sink in for a minute. Mid 11th century, where we actually find the first reference to it. First, not second, not third. The very first reference to it, 11th century. Let's keep reading. It evolved and changed and grew to become what we now recognize with eggnog and a tree. But it was not without its detractors. What did my daughter just read about that tree? Jeremiah chapter 10 verses 1 through 6. Let's keep going. In England, Parliament banned Christmas for 12 years from 1647 under Cromwell. That ban was lifted only for it to be imposed in the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1660. This ban on Christmas, becoming law in many places, lasted until the apparent progressive state of Alabama was the first. Alabama was the first U.S. state to legalize Christmas when, you can read it, 1836. So for those of you who say that Christmas been in this country since the beginning and inception of it, wrong. Completely wrong. It was outlawed. Meaning there was almost 200 years during which it was criminal to celebrate Christmas in the U.S. Well, the founding fathers founded this country on Christian basis. Well, you don't know what you're talking about, son. Christmas has always been a part of society. It has always been a part of the church. And if you're going to come to Ebenezer Baptist Missionary All-Incorporated Church of God in Christ, then you will recognize Jesus, for our founding fathers have always celebrated the holiday. Wrong, more wrong. Founding fathers didn't celebrate nothing. Ain't my founding fathers anyway. But even them didn't celebrate this holiday. It was not legalized until 1836 by the state of Alabama. Read it again, meaning there was almost 200 years. 200, not 20, not 2. 200 years during which it was criminal. So how could this country be founded on Christian basis, but they just arbitrarily forgot Christmas? Yeah, that's that silence I had to give you right quick. It don't make no sense either, doesn't it? Let's keep going. Oklahoma became the very last state to make Christmas legal again in 1907, despite U.S. making it a federal holiday in 1870. So Oklahoma was like, I don't care what the federal government say, we still ain't celebrating this year. until 1907, after it was already made a federal holiday in 1870. But it wasn't first legalized until 1830s. You telling me 1870 is when it finally got legalized across the United States? And you still had a state that was like, nah, I ain't doing that, till 1907. Think about that. That's not long ago in the grand scheme of history. So while you may have known that Christmas was originally a pagan festival, you might not have known that in the UK it was made illegal for 12 years, and in the US it was illegal for 260 years. 260 years. And I'm gonna finish reading articles. If you want to know more, check out this really amazing graphic all about Christmas here, the history of Christmas. I will leave this link so you can go do more research on your own regarding this pagan holiday, this pagan consecrated festival religious day. So why am I bringing this up? Because we have to get past this, my people. We got to get out this foolishness. I don't care who you are, who you think you are, especially coming from the so-called black, so-called African-American, so-called Negro perspective. We are the people of the book. We are the Israelites, descendants of Yaakov. Our ancestors didn't participate in this garbage until we started going away from him. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about today. Yesterday, Christmas Eve, church filled up. For those that had Christmas service morning, church filled up, praising a false deity that has done nothing more than kept us in bondage. That's it. This is ridiculous. Let's keep going. Now, what I also want to do is that we've dealt with it from scriptorial basis. Yirmiyahu, read by my wonderful princess. Yirmiyahu chapter 10, verses 1 through 6. Talks about the cutting of the tree, bringing it in the home, fastening it up, decorating it. Ain't supposed to do that. She laid that out perfectly with her wonderful reading. Then we went into the etymology. For those of us that believe that this has been going on since forever, that Christmas has just been a part of our heritage. Which you also notice that was talking about Old English. And if you go in, and I will read a book called African People and European Holidays, a Mental Genocide, we'll go into that, and it'll even broken down more by the author of that book, and we'll make sure that we get to him. That breaks it down that this is European. This is not even for the so-called African-American, so-called black, so-called Negro at all. This is a European perspective type of holiday. Now we dealt with that. Now you deal with the legal side of things. This is legalism. Wasn't established in this country till 1907. Made a federal holiday in 1870. The last state, Oklahoma, decided to say, hey, I'm going to jump on board in 1907. So it was not fully mandated across these states until 1907. Even in the UK, it was banned for 12 years. Now we're going to deal with the finance portion of this. African Americans buying power tops $1 trillion. October 3rd, 2016. Okay. Let's see what this author has said. Don't worry, I will leave these links. Now, when I read this, I'm going to link this to Christmas. Believe that. On why this is so important. Because we like to give gifts for Christmas. I'll tell you a gift we can give each other as a people after we finish reading this. It says spending by African Americans on dining out, home improvement, automobiles, and financial services is on the uptick according to packaged facts. The well-documented rapid growth of Hispanic, Asian, and other multicultural segments of the U.S. population has at times overshadowed the noticeable economic growth and influence of African Americans. within the past 5 years, pay attention, the buying power of African Americans topped $1 trillion, according to African Americans Demographic and Consumer Spending Trends 10th edition. Between 2010 and 2015, African Americans' buying power grew from $995 billion to $1.3 trillion, for a cumulative growth of 27%. Looking ahead, Packaged Facts forecast cumulative growth of 16% between 2015 and 2020. Now, I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to leave a link to this so we can read the rest of, so you can take time out and read the rest of this, because this goes into another article. How do black people in America spend $507 billion annually? This is an older article, because now, as you just saw, we're at the trillion mark. Let's go through this right here. How black people spend their money has been a hotly debated topic, not only on this site, but in our office, at social events, and in beauty and barbershops across America. As we look at the year in review, this article has been the most read and commented article for 5 years running. Once I learned that this was the most popular and discussed article on the website, I decided to do some research and share this information with others. The first question that I wanted to answer to was, how long does money stay in the community? Let's see the answer. A dollar circulates 6 hours in the black community. Now let's look at the rest. 17 days in the white community, 20 days in the Jewish community, and 30 days in the Asian community. What is the problem with that statement, family? Now, I want you to think about the article we just looked at. $1.3 trillion is our spending power as a so-called black, so-called African American, so-called Negro. Now, that $1.3 trillion that we are estimated to have that buying power estimate only circulates in the community, our community, the so-called black, so-called African American, so-called Negro community, for 6 hours. That's ridiculous. As opposed to the so-called white, so-called Jewish, and so-called Asian community, they're at days. Not just days, they talking about more than 2 weeks. Does it circulate in their communities before leaving? We don't make 6 hours. Now, I don't know about you, our average work day is 8 hours on average. You telling me the money don't even stay in our own community, the average of a regular 8-hour work day? I don't know about you, but that's an issue. Well, how does that correlate to Christmas? I'll tell you how it correlates to Christmas in just a minute. Let's keep going. The American dream remains out of reach for many African Americans and Hispanic families, said Signed Mary McCarran, co-director of the Opportunity and Ownership Initiative at the Urban Institute. Quote, families of color who will be the future majority population of this country are not on a firm wealth building path, end quote. Blacks and Hispanics lag in building. Look where the so-called white folks at. Let's keep going. Who have more savings? So-called white folks have more savings than us. Let's keep going. Now, look at how we spending our money. Blacks spend their money overwhelmingly with white businesses on the following products and services: tobacco, $3.3 billion; whiskey, wine, and beer, $3 billion; non-alcoholic, $2.8 billion; leisure time spending, $3.1 billion; toys, games, and pets, $3.5 billion; telephone services, $18.6 billion; gifts alone, $10 billion; charitable contributions, $17.3 billion; healthcare, $23.6 billion. Now, gifts alone is 10 billion. What do you give during Christmas season? What do you give during Christmas season? Overwhelmingly, it didn't say a little bit. This article said overwhelmingly with white businesses. You want to give a gift since you want to celebrate Christmas, family? We want to be a people that's all about this Christmas life, and we really want to. How about we give ourselves a gift and support each other? How about that? How about that? If we really, since we really in the gift giving mode, how about we support our own business for a change? How about we give to our own organization? They got many so-called black, so-called African American organizations out there that's trying to do something for our own communities and can't get no funding. But when it comes to overwhelmingly with the white businesses, that means we're giving $17.3 billion to white charitable organizations. What? And then get mad because the hood is the hood? And you giving away, we giving away, all of us giving away $17.3 billion? Seriously, how does that make sense? And then turn around and spend. So between charitable contributions and gifts to the so-called white man business, you talking about $27 billion. Tell me that can't be used in the hood somewhere. Tell me that can't be used in our own community somewhere. What do you think could happen if we spent $27 billion on our own people? What do you think could happen? You won't need affirmative action. You will have businesses. But we too busy caught up in Jesus Christ, offerings, tithes, which is misappropriately and miscommunicated, misinformedly taught in these churches. That's what we dealing with right now, family. So the next time one of us want to complain about the hood, our situations, what the police department doing, why we can't see no change, affirmative action, more diversity, gentrification. Anytime we want to complain about that, just remember we giving away almost $30 billion to so-called white businesses. And that's not only white business, but this is just white business. We ain't talked about how the Arabs own everything in our community. The so-called Asian, so-called East Indian own all the stuff in our whole community. We own nothing. Nothing. There are approximately 21 black-owned banks with assets totaling approximately $4.7 billion. That's only about 0.43% of black Americans' $1.1 trillion in buying power. How does that even make sense? I bring this all together because we worried about Christmas. Gift giving, right? And we spending our hard-earned dollars. Some of us going as deep as going into credit. And gonna be spending over this same gift for the next 6 months. Talking about 6 months, no interest. 90 days, no interest. 1 year, no interest. 18 months, no interest. That's what we gonna be doing. And some of us say, well, can't get the no interest, but we can get the little 2%, 3%, 5% interest. And some of us don't even care. Got credit cards with 35% interest on it, 32% interest on it, 25% interest on it, and we just go ahead on and spin it up for Christmas and celebrate a deity that was introduced to our people in bondage and say that we're going to have a merry time. There's something wrong with us, people, and we need to get it together. Real spill. Let's keep going. So we've done with the etymology. We've dealt with the paganism of this criminalistic holiday. We've dealt with the etymology of Santa Claus and all that. We've read Yirmiyahu chapter 10 verses 1 through 6. And I'm just clicking through to make sure I've covered all my bases before we get to this last bit of reading. Right here. We're going to come from African people and European holidays, mental genocide by Ishakamusa, Barashango. Dr. Baras, this is a doctor. He has a PhD. Dr. Barashango has 20 pages that I'm about to read. If you get tired of the reading, cut it off. Come back later. But it's imperative that you hear what this man has to say. Excuse me now. I probably will bot some of these words up, but at least I'm taking my time out to read them to you. So now you don't even have to read. Just listen. And what I'll be coming from is chapter 6, which is starting on page 58. And as I told you, it's about 20 pages, 18 to 20 pages that I'm about to read. But this is very important. And the reading is as thus. In the spirit, and this is all coming from the book, starting at page 56, says, in the spirit of black unity and love, and with all due respect to my race, I submit that it is absolutely amazing how so many of my people can gullibility accept something simply because it exists. Unfortunately, a large segment of black people will embrace and put their energy into a thing without ever really analyzing the impact, for better or for worse, it may have upon them and their posterity for generations to come. This is the case with African people and European holidays, especially the most European of all holidays, Christmas. Now, again, what I didn't put out is that we have to dodge the African theme here. You see the name of the book. So he comes from an African perspective, saying that so-called Negro, so-called black is African. We know that we are indigenous to the Americas. Okay. Now, if you want to jump off a theme and say that America's Africa, then that's some deep understanding. We can go that route. Then we can use African all day if you would like. But coming from the fact that he's talking about coming from the continent of what is now today known as Africa, and we are African people. We're not Africans. We're not the descendants of Ham. I have a video about that. However, this brother is putting out some information talking about us, but just saying it from an African or coming from a African perspective. So let's make sure that we keep that in mind. But don't let that deter you from the information and the relevancy of that which this great doctor is speaking. Let's keep going. There are even those among us who will look upon you as though you have the plague when you inform them you do not indulge in the celebration of the European fantasy commonly called Christmas. This attitude on part of some blacks exhibits their ignorance and lack of understanding of world history, without which one cannot understand the present or the future. The main purpose of this chapter is to appeal to the common sense and superior intelligence which lays dormant in so many of us by introducing some very basic historical and cultural facts about Christmas. Because of the production limitations on the size of book 1, we are unable to give a full treatment of this subject in this chapter. However, we will devote more time and space to the study of Christmas, its origins, and the deep dark secrets behind its true significance in book 4 of this series under the heading Christmas Madness, an in-depth study of the Christmas fantasy. Nevertheless, as you study the present chapter, you will find the information of the origins and purposes of Christmas as set forth here reveal that the celebration and significance of this European holiday is indeed foreign to very nature of African people. As the facts unfold, it will become clear to you that Christmas is not a part of us as a people, for it is certainly not a real part of our history. The question may arise as to why we refer to Christmas as the most European of all holidays. The answer is in two parts. Firstly, the practice of Christmas observance is the essence of ancient customs and beliefs of the Greeks, Romans, Celts, Teutons, Nordics, Germans, Slavs, and others come lately European peoples. Although some vague remnants of African and Asian customs are still remotely present in this celebration, and despite the claim of its exponents that Christmas is the birthday of Jesus Christ, which we shall shortly see that it is not, this celebration is a direct extension of European customs and practices, many of which are shockingly eerie and disgusting as well. which took place during the coldest and darkest part of the year. Secondly, Christmas supports the existing economic power of Euro-American and other European countries. What it does is bring up the slack in the gross national product of the end of the year. Let me read that again. What it does is bring up the slack in the gross national product at the end of the year. One more time. What it does is bring up the slack in the gross national product at the end of the year. Any and everything is put on the market for the consumer to buy. Statistically, black people are 99% consumer. Let's say that again. Statistically, black people are 99% consumer. This is, we produce less than 1% of the goods in this country, in the world, as a matter of fact. This means, in essence, that as a people, we help keep the economy of the United States of America and the Western world in motion. Let that marinate for a minute. Let's keep going. In 1978, as a race, we spent over $70 billion in America alone. And that's not taking into account the expenditures and transactions that could not be statistically recorded, which would probably push the figure to over $100 billion. Where did all that money go? Why do we not see the benefits of same in our communities? Why are we still in the impotent position of seeking from others that which we should be providing for ourselves? Is this truly fantastic when you consider the fact that we have very little control over the tens of billions of dollars that come and go out of the black settlements each year? Why is this? Why is this? The answers to these questions are too involved to be discussed here, but needless to say, one of the key factors of our role as, quote, vehicles of purchases, end quote, is the enormous amount of money black people spend on Christmas each year. Not only do you have a tendency to buy the most expensive gifts, but feel you are compelled to do so. Madison Avenue has so thoroughly taken over your mind that you fear the scorn and disapproval of your friends and loved ones if you don't spend that money on Christmas. This is why we refer to Christmas as the, quote, merry mess, end quote, because it is one of those European instruments of mind torture that gets you in a mess and keeps you there. Again, the purpose of the information in this chapter is to help you liberate yourself from this madness which has imprisoned you and keep you groveling at the feet of your natural enemy. Next section is called, In Reality, What is Christmas? Let's read. The term Christmas comes from the Old English, Christus Mass, quote, end quote, which is supposed to mean literally the celebration of the birthday of Christ, whom a correct study of history clearly reveals to be a black Messiah. The designation for Christmas was first used in the 11th century. We already went over that, didn't we? Now him coming out the book with it. Over the 11th century of the Christian era. It is important for us to keep this fact in mind because many believe that on the day Jesus was born, his mother looked at his father and said, quote, let's celebrate Christmas, end quote, when in actuality the word Christmas did not come on the scene until some 10 centuries. That is over 1,000 years after the birth of Jesus. Another definition of Christmas, which many of us declare and sing so joyfully, is the French word Noel. Again, we already went over this, right? But let's keep going. The word in turn is derived from the Latin natalis, meaning birth. From this, we get the modern day expression nativity, which at the mere mention of throws many people into a state of mysticism and adoration as they start hearing angelic choirs sing, "Oh, come all you faithful," in the first Noel. When in reality, the word simply means birth, a phenomenon quite common to the human experience. We mention this here because we understand the importance of stripping away the mysticism that has kept us as a people so enthralled to this, the most European of all holidays. Next, we come to a German word, Weihnachten, meaning holy night. Another German terminology used in reference to Christmas season is Kris Kringle, denoting birth of Christ's child. Kris Kringle is generally portrayed as a jolly fat elf with a long white beard, donning a red suit, who transports himself through the air in a sled pulled by reindeer. Now, wouldn't you say this is a fair indication that the creator of this fantasy really intended to mess with people's minds? For it behooves me as to how a jolly fat elf flying all over Europe in a sled drawn by reindeer and the Christ child who is said to have been born in the manger and grew up in Palestine to become a great prophet among his people can be one and the same. Then there is the Italian Natale, meaning birth, and La Navidad, a Spanish terminology also meaning the birth. Before England became a nation, the Anglo-Saxons who dwelt in the land used the word Geol, from which comes the word Yule or Yuletide season, to signify the feast of the winter solstice, a celebration held in honor of the sun as it starts its journey back towards the earth. The commemoration of the winter solstice was usually observed in Europe around December 22nd, long before Joseph and Mary met and Jesus was born. The phrase Dies Natalis Solis Inventia was used in ancient Rome to signify the birthday of the unconquered sun, S-O-N, right? Other location used by the Roman was Saturnalia, a Bactrian feast to their god of the harvest, Saturn. The word Bactrian, as used here, denotes how the Romans would get down and wallow in the depths as they parted to a frenzy and staged orgies, doing whatever or whoever came to mind. We will lend more discussion to that subject, Saturnalia, later in this chapter. Note how all the preceding definitions are from European countries and related to European culture. There is nothing African about them, therefore they have nothing to do with you and your well-being. For Europe is not your ancestral homeland, the tropical land of Africa is. Yet every year during this season, many black people, as though in a hypnotic trance, find themselves moving feverishly in preparation for Christmas Day, which, as you say, only comes once a year. I say it's a good thing it doesn't come more often than that. For if it did, black people would be in even worse shape than we are now, which in many cases is somewhat similar to the dependent bird in a cage who thinks that his restricted quarters is the sum total of all there is to the world. Next section. Controversy over the birthday of Jesus Christ. Now let us deal with the birth of Jesus Christ, which according to the Europeans is supposed to have taken place on December 25th. First of all, the date December 25th was commemorated in the ancient world long before Jesus was born as the birth date of Horus in Egypt, as the birth date of Horus in Egypt, as the birth date of Horus in Egypt, on the continent of Africa. Horus, one of the many Ethiopian manifestations of the sun, was the Hilo, sun disk wearing son of Isis and Osiris, born some 4,000 or more years ago, at least 2,000 years before the New Testament Christ, at least 2,000 years before the New Testament Christ, at least 2,000 years before the New Testament Christ, 2,000 years before the New Testament Christ. In those days, December 25th was also observed as the birthday of Tammuz, the Babylonian god of love, and the nativity of Mithra, a Persian sun deity who depicted with a brilliant halo of light around his head, the sacred icon of Ethiopian sun disk. Again, Dionysus, the Roman Bacchus, a Greek adaptation of the African Asian savior god commonly associated with the vine, the vineyard and vine, was born December 25th. The Greek Romanized version of Dionysus eventually became a homosexual god of the Europeans, whom they delighted in worshiping through a ceremony which consisted of the men coming together, getting sloppy drunk, stripping themselves and each other naked and engaging in filthy practices as same-gender copulation. When the reprobate ritual was over, the men would go home and beat up their wives. During the Imperial Roman period, December 25th was celebrated as the birthday of the agricultural god named Saturn. All of the above mentioned gods had a tradition of having died and been resurrected. So the concept of a savior dying and coming back to life again was not unknown to the ancient world, nor did it originate with the coming of European Christianity. Many of today's arrogant and self-righteous so-called Christians who think that all the world should believe in their Savior God would do well to take note of this historical fact. Through an intelligent analysis of history, we find that these resurrected saviors were simply an expression of man's hope for a life after death. In the case of Jesus ben Joseph, commonly referred to as Jesus Christ, who was historically the popularly elected king of the oppressed black nation of Israel. Notice this African author did have to make sure he thought that he recognized that the black nation of Israel, it was an expression of the renewed hope of his people, that even after his assassination, the victorious outcome of their struggle for independence will be achieved. This subject will be studied in detail in the forthcoming work by this author entitled Black Historical Facts on the Life of Jesus, end quote. December 25th as the birthday of Christ was not adopted until 325 CE, Christian era /AD, at the Nicene Council. In an effort to harmonize and systematize the complex and diverse Christian dogma which existed at that time, a council of 318 bishops met in the city of Nicaea in the kingdom of Bithynia, today's Turkey, at the mandate of the Roman Emperor Constantine. The date accepted by the majority of the European bishops assembled was not finalized until the publishing of the Philo-Sicilian calendar by the Roman Catholic Church in 354 CE. Note how this date was set some 325 years after the birth of Jesus Christ was supposed to have taken place. Observation on the part of the European Christian Church that other rival religions celebrated the birthday of their Savior God was motivating factor behind this action. So the European Christian decided to set aside a day to commemorate the birth of the Europeanized Jesus. It is important that we pause here and make very clear what we mean when we refer to the Europeanized Jesus. In this designation, we are talking about something or someone that is distinctly different from the original Messiah, Jesus ben Joseph, the King of the Jews. One is a myth and the other a historical figure. By most historical indication, Jesus, the Afro-Israelite, did live. He was an historical reality who fought for the liberation of his people and was crucified, lynched on the cross according to the Roman form of punishment used to eliminate the freedom fighters of that day. Let's read that again. Let's read that one more time. By most historical indications, Jesus, the Afro-Israelite, did live. He was an historical reality who fought for the liberation of his people and was crucified, lynched on a cross according to the Roman form of punishment used to eliminate the freedom fighters of that day. This historical Jesus was black as midnight and dedicated to the cause of independence. On the other hand, you have the mythological Jesus, a cop bleached out version of the original with blonde hair, blue eyes, gentle and effeminate. As the European came more in contact with the rest of the world, they found themselves surrounded by a sea of color, and most of these sun-kissed people were guided by some spiritual expression. The European found himself devoid of this spirituality, and with the help of some unprincipled brothers, like the Apostle Paul, set out to counterfeit the original religion of Jesus, the Black Messiah. This subject too will be further expanded upon in the forthcoming work entitled, quote, Black Historical Facts on the Life of Jesus, end quote. For many years, there was much controversy over the exact date upon which Christmas should be celebrated. The Eastern Church at Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, celebrated the birth of Jesus, the visit of the wise men, and the baptism of Jesus on January 6th, which is referred to in the Western Church as the Feast of Epiphany, manifestation. This date is observed by the Eastern Orthodox Church even to this day. Some of the other dates that were celebrated throughout the 300 or so years before the finalization of December 25th were January 8th, February 2nd, March 25th or 29th, April 19th, May 20th, September 29th, November 17th, and different dates in the month of August. In other words, they didn't know what day Jesus was born. Now, how can someone of great stature who saved us, I'm not quoting the book, quick commentary, how can someone of great stature like this, who's supposed to have saved the entire world from their sin, not have a date recorded on when he was born? Let's think. Family, that don't make sense. I'm going to read that one more time. Let's back up. Some of the other dates that were celebrated throughout the 300 or so years before the finalization of December 25th were January 8th, February 2nd, March 25th or 29th, April 19th, May 20th, September 29th, November 17th, and different dates in the month of August. In other words, they didn't know what day Jesus was born. European bishops got together and said, quote, look, all this confusion about the birthday of Jesus is going to be stopped. This is the day we have chosen, and we have the armies of Constantine to enforce it. To enforce it. End quote. So the Roman Catholic Church finally decided December 25th will be the best date, since some Europeans were already celebrating Saturnalia on that date. By the end of the 4th century CE, the Christian world, with the exception of the Eastern churches and possibly the Coptic Church of Ethiopia, was celebrating Christmas on December 25th. In the story of civilization, Will Durant writes, quote, paganism survived in the moral sense of a joyous indulgence of natural appetites. As a religion, it remained only in the form of ancient rites and customs condoned or accepted and transformed by an often indulgent church. An intimate and trustful worship of saints replaced the cults of the pagan gods and sanctified the congenial polytheism of simple or poetic minds. Statues of Isis and Horus were renamed Mary and Jesus. The Roman Lupercinia and the Feast of the Purification of Isis became the Feast of the Nativity. The Saturnalia were replaced by Christmas celebration. End quote. That's coming out of the book In the Story of Civilization, authored by Will Durant. Let's keep going. To Protestant and Catholic Europeans, anything outside of Christianity is considered to be pagan. This is to say unacceptable as a mode of spiritual expression. This sheer arrogance on the part of the European is unjustified, for they transmuted the ancient rites and customs of other people, placed the Europeanized labels on them, and applied same to suit their purpose. The reverence which people of color have for all living things is and has been from time immemorial typified in venerated celebrations and worship services. The basic doctrine of the most ancient theologians states that the creative power of divine intelligence is present everywhere and manifests its dynamics in all forms of nature. All things are seen as a revelation and extension of the total creative source, variously referred to as one and on, the unmoved mother, the Orion, the Junju, Yahweh, Allah, and a myriad of other titles used to denote the unity of the incomprehensible cosmos. The European Christian, in particular the Roman Catholic Church, claims to be opposed to this form of worship, yet they copied it and carried it over into the adoration of their saints, kissing statues, kissing the Pope's ring, kissing this and kissing that, which became a mechanism in the hands of the religio-political state powers used to control the ignorant and poverty-stricken masses. Realizing that the perverted forms of the ancient rites practiced by the simple-minded Europeans during the feast of the winter solstice could not be stopped, and recognizing Zoroastrianism as its chief contender for the religious devotion to the people, the Roman Catholic Church decided to solemnize December 25th as the birthday of the Europeanized Christ. In fact, what the European ecclesiastical institution did was absorb everything happening around them and change the name, thereby modifying the cultural significance of the original rites and customs. Next section, Saturnalia. The Roman festival of Saturnalia was celebrated December 17th to December 23rd. Later in Roman history, it was extended until December 24th and 25th. December 25th being observed as the birth date of Saturn by the devotees of Mithra by the followers of Zoroastrianism. Essentially, Saturnalia was the feast of the winter solstice, when the days began to lengthen and the sun starts his journey back towards the earth around December 22nd. This celebration was especially significant to Europeans because of the harsh, cold climate in most of their countries, which left the land barren and non-productive. In a place where there was little summer, it can be readily seen how this festival would have such great importance. On the second day of the Banturian celebration of Saturnalia, young pigs were offered on the altar and blood pudding was made. Look at that. Young pigs. Let's keep going. This disgusting dish was a prime delicacy of the European, a people who once painted themselves blue. This is where the term blue blood comes from, and ran naked from cave to cave, busting each other in the head with clubs and engaging in combat over a piece of raw meat. When Africans were building the pyramids and wooing the ebony queens with incense and love poems, many Europeans were making overtures to their women by grunting, smacking them upside their heads with the club and dragging them off by the hair to copulate. This is why rape is such a sensationalized phenomenon in European culture today. During the 6-day festival of Saturnalia, slaves were temporarily freed to attend the festival. It is said that during this season, the slaveholder will grant the slave any request except his freedom. Also, during this period, the roles were supposedly reversed, and the slave vicariously walked in the shoes of the master, who would serve him his breakfast in bed and many other amenities which customs oblige. But when the festival was over, a slave in the Roman Empire was still a slave. The Saturnalia, which later became known as Christmas, was one time referred to in Europe as the quote, the festival of fools, end quote. Next section. Saturnalia, aka Christmas, and its historical development in Europe. Quote, at Christmas time, many towns appointed a lord of misrule to organize pastimes and spectacles for the populace. Murmurs in mass and beard and jolly garb went about performing street plays or pranks or singing Christmas carols. Houses and churches were decked with holly, ivy, and whatever the season afforded to be green, end quote. Picture this scene, if you will, the festival of fools led by the Lord of Misrule, with pale-skinned people wrapped in layers of swaddling rags and animal skins, aping up and down the snowy streets, gorging themselves on blood pudding, while threads of blood Threads of blood rare meat caked their teeth and hung out of the side of their mouths as the stench of thousands who hadn't taken baths for months or even years filled the air. This, from what we can garner of the present day available to us, is a true historical portrait. It is part of the European heritage, which in turn is part and parcel of the heritage of Christmas. During the Protestant Reformation, Christmas celebrations were subdued, then finally banned and forbidden in England during the administration of Oliver Cromwell and the Puritans, 1642 to 1652. The Puritan prohibition was carried over to the New England colonies by the so-called pilgrims, and though observed by the Netherlands colonies, it was not until the 19th century, about 1856, when German and Irish immigrants came to the United States, that enthusiasm for the Christmas feast began to spread throughout America. At this time, all objections were swept aside, and the old European traditions revived among the Protestants as well as the Catholics. Each European ethnic group retained specific customs of their ancestral lands and added it to the Christmas melting pot, which essentially made the celebration of Christmas a pan-European holiday. So I ask you, black people, what are you celebrating when you celebrate Christmas? Some say they are doing this for the children because it makes them happy. Then let us put to you another question. Is this what you want your children to be cultivated on? And glorification of the images of European culture while neglecting your own? And you wonder why many black youths are confused today. Take a good look at what has been done. What you have given your children to mentally feed upon is at best a carbon copy of a white man's fantasy, which supports capitalist exploitation and keeps black people under the bondage of Euro-American economic pressures. This is one of the legacies of ignorance which can only serve to perpetuate the continued mental, spiritual, and oftentimes physical degradation of our youth. Some defend Christmas on the basis that it is a time for cheer, peace, goodwill, and the giving of gifts to friends and loved ones. Consider this question. Are you so shallow-minded that you need Madison Avenue to tell you when to love, enjoy, and give gifts to your loved ones and your friends? Would it not be far more intelligent to manifest these acts on holidays that are relevant to your cultural experience, celebrations, which project the values that are necessary for the survival of you, your family, your black nation, and race? We respectfully suggest that you take a good look at the new African 7-day celebration of Kwanzaa, which will be discussed in the next chapter. Anatomy of this next section, anatomy of the cultural significance of Christmas symbols. Let me stop right there for a quick second. Now, we as a so-called black African American so-called Negro don't need a holiday like Kwanzaa. And I will tell you why right quick. The reason being is because during this month we have what is called the Feast of Dedication. I will be making a video on that, so stay tuned. Let's keep going. Anatomy of the cultural significance of Christmas symbols. The Christmas tree. Perhaps the most noted of the Yuletide symbols is the Christmas tree, which dates back to the time when the Romans decorated trees sacred to Bacchus, the Greek Dionysus, by hanging masks and fertility symbols on them. As concerning Europeans in their chronic fertility crisis, Dr. Francis Wensling cites their, quote, numerical inadequacies, end quote, in, quote, the crest theory of color confrontation, end quote. In this brilliant paper, she discusses white people's lack of profundity in the natural process of procreation as opposed to that of the African and Asian. In other words, white people's inability to have babies as frequently as people of color can. Furthermore, vegetation was so sparse in relationship to the total population of Europe that they generally decorated their houses with anything green they could find. In fact, in some places, they literally worship trees, especially the evergreen. Whites were amazed that anything in Europe could stay green year around, as did the evergreen tree. So they made it sacred to Freya, the German goddess of love, from which it derived the name of the day of the week known as Friday. Today, black folks sure love Friday. For many, it is the payday, and for countless others, it is the time when the weekend party starts. And all the time that you are singing and dancing, you are not even aware that you are in fact disowning in the German goddess of love, who, by the way, was depicted as a hermaphrodite, part male, part female. Now ask yourself, is this a true part of your culture? Are you German? The obvious answer to a sane person would be certainly not. Then what madness is driving you to dance to the German hermaphrodite deity of love? Truly, it is the madness of a slave mentality and the lack of the knowledge of self. For historical speaking, the Germans nor their goddess has ever shown much love for you. The legend of Saint Boniface's Christmas tree. According to this legend, the first Christmas tree appeared in Germany around 716 CE after an English missionary named Winford, later dubbed Saint Boniface, stopped some German from sacrificing the young prince to an oak tree. In those days, the German and Scandinavians considered the oak to be sacred to their war god Odin or Woden, from which the Americans derived the day of the week called Wednesday. As a sign of the divine approval of Winford's intervention, the tale goes on to state that an evergreen miraculously sprung up out the ground, and the Germans, who at one time were resolved to offer up their princes, now turned to decorating the tree. We cite this story to make clear the fact there were no Christmas trees as such when Jesus was born. Many have been so psyched out by the Christmas fantasy that they envisaged the moment the Christ child was born, a fir tree sprung up out the ground, trimmed with angel hair, tinsels, balls, candy canes, flickering lights, and a star or the angel on top, as the town folk of Bethlehem sang jingle bells. No, it didn't happen that way at all. The recognition of the evergreen as a symbol of Christmas did not come about until the 17th century and was not widely accepted until about the middle of the 19th century, indeed a long time after the supposed fact. Later in German history, around the 1500s, another legend arose that Martin Luther, the leader of the Protestant Reformation, started the custom of decorating Christmas trees. According to this legend, Luther placed lighted candles on a fir tree in an attempt to explain to his family how the beautiful night sky affected him. The Christmas tree was imported to England from Germany, largely through the influence of Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband, where it replaced the oak sacred to Odin. Mistletoe, the golden broth. Mistletoe, a parasitic plant with pale green leaves and bright yellow berries, was known among certain ancient people as the golden broth. Possessions of this golden broth was believed by many to provide apodorsaic and other magical powers. To the Druids, members of a secret society of ancient Europe who divided by stabbing their victims and decimating according to which way the blood would spurt, the mistletoe was also sacred. The blood-letting Druids trimmed their huts and caves with the golden balls during the celebration of the 25th of December festival, at which time they lighted great fires on the tops of the hills to announce the birthday of the god Sol. This was the moment when, after the winter solstice, he is said to have begun to increase and gradually to ascend. You have to excuse me for a minute, my people. I have read this book before, but now that my mindset is in what it is now, I am still astonished, majorly astonished at some of the stuff that I'm reading. Let's continue to read. Give me 1 second. Let's keep going. My apologies, I'm getting a little parched. It's a lot of reading, but we're gonna keep going. We're gonna muscle through this. The humble mistletoe plant in Scandinavian mythology is depicted as growing on the sacred oak of Odin, attended by the priest who referred to himself as King of the Woods, the personification of Jupiter, the Roman sky god. Quote, each candidate for the office of King of the Woods would have plucked a sprig of the golden bark from the higher branches of the sacred oak and then engaged the incumbent priest in mortal combat, end quote. The legend of the King of the Wood, a priest who stalked the oak grove in sinister gloom, his sword drawn menacingly, those whom he supported of converting his exalted post, describe him as the priest who slew the slayer and shall himself be slain. What a fitting portrayal of the Norseman's main characteristic trait. This contemptuous motley of creatures from the far recesses of the north was so preoccupied with the violence of their brutish passions, they referred to their blessed abode after death as Valhalla, the place where warriors fought one another all day long, which their wounds will be miraculously healed at night as they banquet in preparation for another day's battle. This was the Norsemen's idea of heaven. It is said in Danish folklore that the most beloved of these deities, Balder, the god of spring, was slain by a sprig of mistletoe hurled at him by his blind brother Hoder, who was inspired by Loki, the demon. And here you are today running around grabbing sisters and kissing them under the mistletoe. The next time you are tempted to do this, ask yourself, what kind of sense does it make? Are you allowing yourself to be fooled into thinking that you need to get your woman under a symbol of the Scandinavian god to kiss her during the so-called Christmas season? Think about it. Next section, the Yule log. The Yule log was burned by Norsemen in adoration for their thunder god, Thor, which comes Thursday, whom they said rode across the sky in a chariot drawn by 2 goats. The traditional burning of the Yule log was also commemorated in more remote times in celebration of the event when the African taught the European how to warm his cave. Another example of the European subconscious recollection of the African in the fire is set forth in the legend of Sir Lancelot and the fire-spitting dragon. During what is referred to by some scholars as prehistoric times, Africans designated as Gormandi went into Europe and subdued the ignorant tribes that dwelt there, carrying with them as they went torches of fire, from before which the ignorant troglodyte fled into terror. Under the standard borne by the conquering Africans was the sign of the dragon. Thousands of years later, after a particular group of Africans had left Europe, the remnants of this event still torment the European psyche. The fixation was so intense that somewhere between the 6th and 8th centuries CE, legends has it that King Arthur and his knights of the Round Table were still going in search of a fire-spitting dragon, but in actuality, they were going in search of the African who had just recently burned them again when the Moors invaded the conquered parts of Europe under the leadership of Gebel Tariq in 711 CE. Going into the Christmas lights now. Lights are extremely valuable in ancient Europe because of its inclement and foggy weather. Ever since the post-Ice Age, Europe has been known for its cold and dreary climate. In ancient times, it was considered by most of the Earth's inhabitants as the most undesirable place to live. Over the millennia, these harsh conditions gradually subsided in the southern portions of the continent until by the time of the Gormadi invasion, called the Mesolithic Age, it was somewhat inhabitable. During the age of the African circumnavigation of the world, it was a long time before they ventured to go into Europe again. Often as the ships manned by ebony crews sailed across the Mediterranean Sea through the gloomy fog and mist off the coast of Europe, they could hear the eerie groanings, strange groanings, and barky sounds of its inhabitants. In antiquity, the continent of Europe was considered by many people of color to be a bottomless pit filled with unimaginable horrors, a forbidden land inhabited by hellish demons. Some have even said that the word Europe means, quote, "you're roped in," end quote. Another significant fact, which deals with the importance of lights in the European experience, took place during the Puritan prohibition of the celebration of Christmas, at which time the common folks will put lighted candles in the windows and let the Catholic priest know that the Yuletide was being celebrated in that home. Going into the chimney. Unfortunately, many black people who seem to be firmly committed to Euro-American cultures are still teaching their children to look for Santa to come down the chimney, when in reality, most black folks don't even own a chimney. The custom of looking for a fairy to come down to the chimney is rooted in the Norse belief that the goddess Hathor entered their crude huts through the chimney, for at that time they had no windows. An Italian tale speaks of one La Befana, an old witch who descended the chimney with gifts. In one hand, she carried a bell, which rang to announce her arrival. In the other hand, she held a switch or a piece of coal, which she used to hit naughty children. Now we in the Santa Claus. The designation Santa Claus comes from Sinister Claus, the Dutch name for Saint Nicholas, referred to some thinking people as Saint Capitalist, a 4th century bishop of Asia Minor who became the Russian partition saint of children, bankers, pawnbrokers, and thieves. The origins of Santa Claus hoax goes back to the time when in many northern European countries, ghosts, witches, trolls, vampires, and other demonic creatures were thought to sit aboard on Christmas Eve. It was on this night that Satan, or Santa, the demon saint, for there was little differentiation between saints and demons in Europe at the time, riding on a jackass or a goat would lead the demons in a merry rivalry as he shared with them the intoxicating substance from his wash bowl. According to the German mythology, Satan first appeared as a hairy imp named Pelleas Niccolo. In Holland and other European countries, the original Old Nick, another terminology for, quote, the devil, end quote, was depicted as a very stern person who rode across the frozen waste on Satan's goat and left a whip instead of toys for naughty children. With the coming of European Christianity to the youth, the demon Saint, quote, Old Nick, end quote, evolved into Saint Nicholas, a bishop of Mithra in Turkey who lived sometime around 300 CE. He is said to have transported himself on a gray horse or white jackass, an ancient Egyptian symbol of Typhon, the devil. I don't know about y'all, but it's a lot of information. I'm reading this right out the book. A lot of information, and I'm telling you something. It's some startling information. Let's keep going. Tradition says that Saint Nicholas restored to life 3 slain children who had been hacked into pieces and stored in brine by a wicked innkeeper. He is also reportedly to have saved 3 young maidens from being sold into slavery as prostitutes by their father through secretly providing them bags of gold for their marriage dowries. Thus, the three belled emblems of pawnbrokers became one of St. Nicholas's sacred symbols. This Dublin's 4th century bishop of Mithra eventually became the patron saint of Russia. He was also designated the patron of children, pawnbrokers, and thieves. As a matter of fact, during the Middle Ages in Europe, thieves were called, quote, clerks of St. Nicholas, end quote. In reference to St. Nicholas and his criminal affiliations, the Ansura Allah community news state, quote, he is really the patron saint of thieves and gangsters who were tagged the quote Knights of Saint Nicholas. Quote, he is the patron saint of the pawnbrokers, and their emblem is traced to them. Pirates embolize his likeness on their flags. Others, wards of Saint Nicholas are spinsters, sailors, etc. End quote. Saint Nicholas increased prominence in Western Europe was a result of Italian merchants who were reputed to have stolen his bones from Mithra and brought them to Bara on the southeastern coast of Italy, May 9th, 1807. The celebration of St. Nicholas's festival, which took place December 6th, the supposed date of the death, was banned by Henry VIII, which he founded the Church of England. Later in English history, the festival was resumed when Queen Victoria married the German Prince Albert, at which time St. Nicholas became Father Christmas. After the Protestant Reformation, St. Nicholas was replaced by the Christ child called Christi Kundil and Christ Kindle in parts of Germany and Switzerland. From this name came the character Kris Kringle, the quote jolly old elf end quote figure who bring gifts at Christmas time, sometimes accompanied by Pez Nicole. According to this particular transition, Pez Nicole, sometimes called Jan, was a little black elf who Santa Claus appointed the traditional HNIC to keep the elves in the factory busy making things. From this story, we can see that St. Nicholas was indeed a cold-blooded capitalist. You never hear of the elves in the shop getting any compensation or fringe benefits for their work. In fact, St. Nicholas hardly ever went into the shop. The brother was in there taking care of business. The legend says that St. Nicholas gave the toys and gifts away free. Well, if this be the case, how come people are paying money for them every year? In 1822, Clement C. Moore, an American minister and poet, first described Santa's fur-trimmed suit and his sled pulling by reindeers. The description appears in Moore's famous poem called "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." This poem further established Santa Claus on the American scene. The idea of his sled being drawn by 8 reindeer comes from the Norse legend of Odin's white horse Slimfer, who held 8 legs and was, according to this tale, the fastest horse in the world. All in all, the concept of the modern Santa Claus is a symbol of the poverty and selfishness of Europeans who only share their gifts with one another once in a year at Christmas. In sharp contrast to this is the traditional system of African Yajamsa, which encourages sharing with one's neighbor on a day-to-day basis. How ridiculous is the idea of sharing things once a year when people have needs of things every day? One of the traumas of Santa Claus myth is a fantasy that people tell their children about him. Imagine after you have worked hard to buy toys and gifts for your children, then turn around and lie to them by giving the credit to some big fat white man named Santa Claus. When the children reach the age where they begin to question this madness, you wring your hands in frustration trying to figure out how you're going to tell them there is no Santa Claus. Do you know what you are doing when you do that? When you do this? Do you? You are running a risk of planting deep within your child's subconscious mind the seeds of distrust for you as a parent. And for what? To what purpose? Don't you know that at the very same time you are unwrapping the gifts on Christmas morning, greedy white capitalists at home sitting around the tables with their families and counting your money? The next time you are tempted to go sneaking around on Christmas Eve after the children are asleep, stop and ask yourself, why am I doing this? What is the meaning of this insanity? Even though, like the rest of us, you have been brainwashed by the economic powers that be, you are still supposed to be intelligent, accountable adults. So shake yourself of this foolishness and put aside these childish things. It is not too late for you. There is a better way. Next section, Christmas and black folks. We're almost done, people. We're almost done, guaranteed. I think we have clearly established in the foregoing study that Christmas is not a part of our history. It is European. We are African, and the two cultures, in spite of what some folk may romanticize, are essentially and diametrically opposed to one another. For black people to continue to celebrate Christmas is to confine ourselves to perpetual mental enslavement, which in some cases can fester into a total destruction of the capacity to reason. For example, some of the most tragic experiences I've ever encountered have been divulged while taken with some unfortunate brothers in prison who have been engaged in a robbing or something or someone in order to get money for Christmas. As I sat there listening to these brothers, I could not help but think what the best important As I sat there listening to these brothers, I could not help but think that the most important thing he could have given his family was himself. I understand all too well the dynamics of the conditioning forces which can lead a man to this. So I appeal to you, black mothers, black wives, black sisters, black sons and daughters, to determine within yourselves that you will not allow yourself to be used as an instrument to bring your man to this point of frustration. It is not good enough to have a strong black man who is working as hard as he can in this ungodly system to take care of his family. Does he have to really put himself out there on a limb to buy you some for Christmas? Such a man should be all the Christmas you need, and you and the children should be all the Christmas he needs. Surely you must come to understand that the most precious gift of all is to have your family structure intact as each of you continue to grow and develop towards a more wholesome lifestyle. Many single brothers have been known to break off with their woman around Christmas time because they could not endure its economic burden. We really need to think seriously about this and ask ourselves if it is really worth the trouble. I've seen sisters dragging brothers from store to store with an armful of packages, and I have discerned from the expression on the brother's face that he is frustrated with the whole affair and is just trying to go along with the program to keep his woman and his family happy. Black woman, let me share with you an idea of how some black men feel about this. Recently, I heard one brother complain that after he and his family had worked and struggled to stay together, he had to go buy the white man stuff because the white man had invaded his home through radio and television advertisements, Christmas cards, and other correction techniques that had programmed his family by constantly reminding him there was only so many shopping days left until Christmas. The last minute dash to the store and the push and shove tug of war involved in hysterical gift buying turns Christmas cheer into a Christmas nightmare. The merry mess and disillusionment of Christmas is further intensified when you consider that on December 25th, after the children have opened up all the presents, by midday disenchantment has set in, and at least half of them have been cast aside in a broken heap. In an effort to escape the frustration of this reality, the adults must resort to positive and proverbial Christmas cheer and break out of the bottle, which in some family is later followed by the ritual of breaking the head. At the point of the aversions of this fool's paradise, quote unquote, many begin to come to light. The frustrations and disappointments do not mix well with the alcohol, and often during the imbibing ceremony somebody goes off, and it's usually the brother that put out all the money for those broken up gifts. As the brother continues to drink the liquor, his guards drop, and he begins to reflect on the harsh realities of this deprived economic condition, which has just been further intensified by the fiasco of Christmas gift buying. Then at the dismay of his family members, he starts to express the true inner feelings of his subconscious mind, which are probably summed up in a statement such as, quote, I really don't want to be a part of this, end quote, censored. Black people must come to understand that Christmas supports an economic power system which very seldom, if ever, works out for our best interest. This inescapable fact brings us to another point of self-examination. Do you really have so much land, wealth, and power that you must take it and give it to the European? Do you have anything better to do with your resources than that? Will you continue to allow yourself to be commercially intimidated by the mass media into buying gifts at Christmas? Of course, there is nothing inherently evil about gift buying, but do you really need somebody to tell you when this should be done? The story is told about a Jewish European who engaged himself in a religious argument with a European Christian. The Christian said to the Jew boy, quote, "One thing I don't like about you people is that y'all don't believe in Jesus Christ," end quote. The Jew replied by saying, quote, "Yes, we do. Every year on December 25th, my father comes home with big sacks of money, piles them up on the table, lifts his hand towards heaven and said, 'Thank you, Jesus,' end quote." This anecdote is a perfect illustration of who really gets the joy out of Christmas. In actuality, Christmas does not celebrate the birthday of Jesus Christ, but rather it applauds, romanticizes, and solidifies pan-European economic domination and power in the world. And I believe this is the last section, family. Bear with me. We're just about done. Christmas on the old plantation. As regard Christmas and antebellum savory, Mother Jenny Proctor, born a slave in Alabama in 1850, was 87 years old when interviewed, but recalled, quote, "Old master would kill a hog and give us a piece of pork. We thought that was something. And the way Christmas lasted was according to the big sweet gum back log, what the slaves would cut and put in the fireplace. When that burned out, the Christmas was over," end quote. In a speech of 1882, Frederick Douglass relates his experience as a slave during Christmas season. Quote, "The days between Christmas Day and New Year's were allowed the slaves as holidays. During these days, all regular work was suspended, and there was nothing to do but keep fires and look at the stock. We regarded this time as our own by the grace of our masters, and we therefore used it or abused it as we pleased. The holiday was virtuously spent. The sober, industrious, one employed themselves in manufacturing corn brooms, mats, horse collars, baskets, and some of these were very well made. Another class spent their time in hunting opossums, coons, rabbits, and other game. But the majority spent the holiday in sports, ball playing, wrestling, boxing, running, foot races, dancing, and drinking whiskey. And the latter were generally most agreeably to the masters. A slave who would work during the holidays was thought by his master undeserving of holidays. There was in this simple act of continued work an accusation against slave, and a slave would not help thinking that if he made $3 during the holidays, he would make $300 during the year. Not to be drunk during the holidays was disgraceful, end quote. Read that last part again. Not to be drunk during the holidays was disgraceful, end quote. We were induced to drink, I among the rest, and when the holidays were over, we are staggered up from our filth and wallowing, took a long breath, and went away to our various fields of work, filling upon the whole rather, glad to go from that which our masters has artfully deceived us into the belief was freedom, back again to the arms of slavery. It was not what we had taken it to be, nor it would have been had it not been abused by us. It was about as well to be a slave to master as to be a slave to whiskey and rum. When the slave was drunk, the slaveholder had no fear that he would escape to the north. It was the sober, thoughtful slave who was dangerous and needed the vigilance of his master to keep him a slave, end quote. Conclusion. Finally, Christmas historically has no real religious significance except to the European world. As such, it has no real meaning to us as a people, for it does not culturally project us in a positive light. Therefore, its failure to meet the needs means that it can only be working against our best interests. Understanding that there are still some immature members of our race who feel they couldn't live without Christmas, we appeal to them to stop the wild spending and acting so foolishly during the Christmas season and divest themselves of this manner. The supposed happiness obtained from the merry mess is too brief to pay such a physical, mental, spiritual, and economic price for. Now we invite you to examine the next 2 chapters of this book, which demonstrate and explore the historical roots and meaning of the 7 black holy days, Kwanzaa, a holiday of free black people. Thus ends the reading of the pages I promised you I was going to read, chapter 6 of the book that you see on the screen, labeled African People and European Holidays, a Mental Genocide by Ishakamusa Barashango, Dr. Barashango. Family, I'll leave you with this. It is quite evident that Christmas is not what it is, what it's been propagated to be, and it's time to wake up. If you do not celebrate Christmas, Hallel Hawa. But if you do, stop. Please stop. I've given you all the references I could possibly come up with. I implore you to check it out, research on your own. Know who you are. Know whose you are. And follow the commands, statutes, precepts, and laws of the Most High, Hawa. I love you all. I hope this edify you on this Christmas day. Shalom.